It's just the two of us, Carlos the shaman and I, in this little hut in the Amazon rainforest. Well, us and thousands of little insects flirting with the kerosene lantern, flapping in and out of the lantern's amber glow, or resting on the makeshift table. Ayahuasca is supposed to be an experience of healing. The locals call it medicine. For that reason, shamans are doctors in a spiritual sense. But my first ceremony, I felt like I got strapped to a rocket of insane pyrotechnics. I was like a kid in a candy store. I was obsessed with that moon and the jaguars and the trapezoids extending outward into infinity. I feel like I lost myself in it. People's first experience, I've read everywhere, is almost always one of metaphorical cleansing. Cleaning out the garbage of your own mind so a person can enter the next experience with a clean slate. The cleansing isn't usually fun. The internet, and what I've heard from fellow travelers, they're all littered with tales of nightmares. People being devoured by snakes, chased by their own ghosts. Anyway, Carlos sits next to me now. He's mixing potions in the old liter jug of Coca-Cola in his lap. As far as baggage clearing goes, my first ceremony wasn't a nightmare. Not like what I've heard anyway. It wasn't terrible. I did learn that my yearning, my obsessive quest for knowledge, was misguided, and maybe that's broadly applicable to my life. And maybe to yours, too. I do know that standing atop a hallucination of a speeding train, surrounded on all sides by an endless expanse of little fluorescent orbs, and asking, where are we going, instead of, where am I? It's just the wrong question to ask in life. Listo, Carlos says. He dims the kerosene lantern. It flickers for a moment and fades to nothing. I slide down from the bench onto the floor before me and sit opposite Carlos. It's just the two of us now, and he's close. So close, I smell stale cigar smoke and musk on his green and white soccer jersey. I hear the familiar glugs of the bottle, the thick splash of soupy roots and mulch, and then the glugs cease and I sense the mug before my face. Mas, I say, confident. Mas? He asks. Sí, mucho más, porfa. He chuckles to himself, and I hear the bottle gasp again. He returns the mug before me, fuller now. Carlos blows smoke from his cigar as I pinch my nose and take it down in a single gulp. This is Baggage Claim. Travel stories no one tells. And I'm Will Conway. Today, ego death, the loving embrace of everyone you've ever met, and a fresh start. If you're new here, welcome. Make sure you subscribe, tell your friends if you enjoy it, and if you really like it, text POD to 332-877-9540. All that stuff's in the description below. Let's get to it. I slide onto my back. I close my eyes and listen to the sounds of my breathing, of Carlos singing. I feel my chest rise and fall, my stomach grind and boil and simmer. And once again, I search the dust stars behind my closed eyelids for signs of life. For signs of, her. For any indication that my quest for knowledge, for just the briefest conversation with this ethereal phantom, is worthy of a second attempt. She doesn't make me wait long. Trees rocket skyward from my periphery, like they did last time, but their colors are inverted now, their trunks blue, pulsating, and their spiny needles twinkling red like nerve endings. The moon shines bright overhead, the silhouette of her head and torso matted within it, as though she lives within the world of the moon. I'm ready. She doesn't move. nothing does. Her face brightens in yellows and blues, but she stays still, gazing into me. Let's talk, I say, discursive and a little too informal. The trees disappear and I'm in the world of tile mosaics, spreading outward to infinity, black where they don't exist, speckled blue and golds in their centers. I don't want to play this game again, I insist to myself. But still, I mose around the mosaics, ornate and real. Time passes and I catch myself falling into the same trap as last time. Chasing, yearning, questing after the experience and hoping that there will be some revelation, some life-transforming realization around the next hallucinatory corner. Eventually I decide that this is my mind. Ayahuasca isn't gonna happen to me. I have to happen. I have to do. I have to act. I can't chase around a hallucination. And so I open my eyes. The mosaics fade. Fireflies dart about the cabin. Distant katydids strum violins and chickens cluck below me. Carlos is still sitting on his bench, drumming his leg and humming. Out in the tree line, I see her face. She's smiling and kind, patient and waiting. The mosaics and the trees buzzing blue and red and red and blue, and the moon and the speeding train and the light at the end of the tunnel, they can't help me. The puzzle isn't meant to be played. I know I have to do it myself. I lock eyes with her, and she locks eyes with me and grins. And 3 women appear before me, hazy, dream-state outlines of their true selves. Her, Cleopatra, and Nefertiti are the jaguar. My ex-fiancé, the one who left me for another. My mother. My mother is as I see her in my memory at first, cloudy and hazy and not entirely shaped. But she becomes firm and vivid, real and blemished with her true imperfection, yet beautiful as she is, sleeping in her bed thousands of miles from where I lay. Mom, I say, and she groans. Mom. She sighs and her eyes blink open. Her arms stretched beside her, folded inward at the elbow. Hey, sweetie, she says, as she would. I decide to talk and find the words as I go. They feel contrived at first, useless and silly and selfish. But her tired eyes pinch at the corners as I speak. I speak for a long time. I find new upset and empty and find new upset and empty and find new upset and empty, only to find more. The words don't seem to come from within any longer. Or, well, I suppose they do, but I'm no longer within the mind of the speaker. The words exist as a kind of transfer of energy from the entity of me to the entity of my mother, with my locus of consciousness positioned above them both, observing. The entity of me continues on, citing examples of perceived injustices from his youth of every variety. He snarls and hisses as he speaks, emotive and frustrated, furious and enraged and frothing. And I observe, dispassionate and calculating, from above. But then, all at once, he calms, and his tone shifts. I'm so sorry. I love you. He sinks into her, hugging and weeping, and she does too. My consciousness returns to my body, but also to hers, and I feel both sets of humanity within myself. Both sets of emotions, and both loving embraces, comforting and empathetic, and with an awareness of both, a deep compassion for the other, and a knowledge of a deep compassion from the other. I feel empathy for myself. I've never felt that before. Forgiveness for my own sins and the sins of her. I feel both humanities as though forever possessed within me. I feel true oneness with her, and in it I feel love, forgiveness, humanity with all its imperfections, and knowledge that it's simply perfect to be flawed. I find my mother's eyes and she finds mine. We stare into each other, through each other. She fades and I sit content in the knowledge of her experience, of her warmth, of her love and my love for her. I sit content in forgiveness while katydids crescendo and fireflies buzz about the ceiling. And I lay for a while, eyes open and not so sure I have anything left to experience. But I see hues of gold radiating from some central point in the ceiling above me, and I smell lilacs. I've only just begun. A golden figure emerges from the stardust above me. It's the woman who, not so long ago, I thought was my life partner. She, too, sits on her bed, but she's awake, shivering, with tears in her eyes. I place a hand on her back, and she melts into my arms like she once did long ago, sobbing in hiccups and whimpers. Her hair is warm and her breath is heavy, and she smells of springtime lilacs the way she always did. I feel her flaws, I feel her imperfection, and I feel the seed of her consciousness knocking at the door of my own. And I hesitate. I can forgive, but do I want to? Do I want to relieve myself of the duty of regret and animosity? Am I prepared to fire myself from the position of protagonist in my own narrative to create a world in which even I am not aligned with myself? If no one is advocating for me, isn't it required that I do? I sit on the bed beside her, stroking her back and toying with her hair as she sobs and her consciousness pleads for entry, and I refuse to answer. Because in a sinister sort of way, it truly does feel good to be the devil. It feels good to punish and roil in the anger of injustice. But I recall the feeling of my mother, the deepest empathy and the deepest love. I recall feeling her within myself and feeling myself through her. And so I relax, let her in. She startles and her eyes go wide, and I know in that moment, and this sounds crazy to say now, but I know with absolute confidence that she, the real person tethered to reality by flesh and blood and geography, not this figment in my brain, I know she can sense my presence. She's so many miles away, but tonight, she's here, and she knows it. She sits in the same position, but she's no longer crying and terrified. She's relieved. I feel her fear within me, offloaded onto my dock like freight from a ship. I feel the terror of our relationship, the agonizing pain of my disappearance, the utter helplessness of my departure. And I feel my own feelings in corresponding moments and realize with clarity that our sensations were nearly identical, though functioning at cross purpose. I feel her joy in new love sprouting from the withering soil of our expiration. I feel her world, gray and dreary before, come alive in a vibrant rainbow of color and feeling. She regains her confidence, her ambition, herself. She comes alive again in the ashes of the memory of me. And I feel joy. I feel empathy and compassion for her trauma, for her lived experience, and I'm so very overjoyed to recognize that she is truly where she is meant to be. The moon has found its place in the sky once more, and with it, Nefertiti, the blue and gold woman staring at me from afar, her foot tapping with impatience. But I see others now, lining up for their own reckoning. I see high school girlfriends and friends long overdue for reconnection. I see the beautiful souls of departed family and those I just forgot existed. They all move as they do, with their little quirks and idiosyncrasies more detailed than my memory could ever be expected to recall. The woman in gold and blue stands on, looking impatient, and I wave her off. I need more time. There are more. There's my brother on a blanket in a Brooklyn park with his guitar. There's Steve with his mustache and that old yellowing copy of 100 Years of Solitude. There's a German woman in an airport and a Colombian man in a bar in Cartagena. There's Julia laughing about that time we nearly drowned in a lagoon, and Jeff sipping an Aguila in a hostel in Medellin. There's an Englishman from a park bench and Sister Pat McTeague from those days in Ecuador. And there's me becoming her and her becoming me. There are lovers and friends and people I only barely knew, but who had some lasting impact of this sort or that. I make amends where I need to. I forgive where I need to. Each conversation sheds ounces from the weight that has plagued my chest for years. Each one relieves me of the weight of the sack I've carried as long as I can remember, as I absorb them into myself, as I hold them closer than I ever could, as they become me, and I become them. I take the time I need. My weight feels nearly lifted. I turn back to the woman in gold and blue, but she's no longer in the moon. She's at the end of a tunnel. And her presence isn't anonymous anymore. She's no longer a flawless, cliché Egyptian goddess. But she's embodied fully human, as Fanny, the woman I met in Brazil 2 weeks prior. She points behind me and I turn to find Judy, smiling bright and beautiful and so loving, so able to be loved. Hola, Will, Judy says with a smile. Hola, Judy, I say. I know I'm holding on to you. I speak in English, but she hears me in Spanish. She speaks in Spanish, but I hear in English. We speak in tongues, sort of the way we always have. You've already lost me, mi amor, she says. Look. She wraps my arms around her and we lay in the field, tall grass tickling our necks and redwoods buzzing blue and red. An old projector clicks and clacks and grainy images from my memory of her splash on a screen before us. Her smile, her heart, her love. I feel them all sharper than I did when I was with her, but still somehow grainy and blurred. I can't watch. I nuzzle her neck, but she pinches me by the jaw and turns my face back to the screen with a giggle. Mira, she says. Look. Images flash on the projection before me. Our future together. The life we lead if I return to her. The images are pristine and vivid and more real than those in my memory. They're specific and real. We live in Colombia for a time with her son, but we moved to New York. She's unhappy there, but we move again to California and she falls in love with the United States. We're so deeply happy, so passionately for each other. Quintessential images of love before me. A wedding day, playing in a field with her son. Golden hues and Pacific sunsets. Satisfaction and happiness. She's pregnant now, beautiful and radiant and round. Look at us, I say. She smiles, but tears tickle her cheeks. Her son is there, And another now. Ours. A young one. A baby girl. Oh, she's so cute. I watch myself on the screen as I play with two children, but my eyes are dark and weary. And Judy no longer appears in the images. She's so beautiful, I say. Te amo, mi amor, she says. Judy retches, blood trickling from the corners of her mouth. She trembles and I hold her, sobbing, and her eyes dance here and there, and she's shaking, dying. Her body fades and I lay in that field alone, weeping, light stretching to infinity around me. I sit silent, mourning the loss of a person still this way. The woman in gold and blue is still standing, silent but closer now, her arms folded across her chest. I run to her and the space shrinks easily. She's before me in a moment. We stand before each other for a long time. She puts her arms around my head and pulls me to her. And she pulls me through her, into her. And I become her, and she becomes me, and I always was her.
There's nothing else.
My chest is heavy and now I'm heaving and I crawl with everything I have to the edge of the floor, 6 feet above muddy ground and chickens murmuring below and pecking at nothing. I retch and I retch and I heave and I gasp and I wipe my mouth and I retch again and I realize Carlos has stopped his singing and he's giggling now and offering affirmation, but it keeps coming. It keeps flowing out of me until there's nothing left but my kidneys and my stomach and my lungs, but I keep heaving, and I worry my organs will soon follow. And I curl up in a ball and heave and retch as Carlos kneels beside me, and then the desire to lose my organs is gone, and the world has quit its shaking, and Carlos is laughing, and I'm a person again, laughing too. And he offers me a hand, and I stand, and he walks me to bed, and I feel about as pure and base and pleasant as I've ever felt. And I tuck myself beneath my mosquito net, and everything feels perfect. And the wind tickles my arm and my cheeks, and Carlos says good night in English, and I fall asleep. Well, that was Baggage Claim. Travel stories no one tells. I'm Will Conway. If you're digging Baggage Claim, 3 steps. Number 1, subscribe. Number 2, share it with a friend. This episode, when you share it, I ask that you tell your friend to wear headphones and close their eyes. If you got this far, that's probably what you were doing. Step 3, keep Baggage Claim ad-free. If you text MEMBER to 332-877-9540, I'll send you more information. Hint, bonus content for the upcoming interviews. If you're not comfortable texting, there's links for everything down in the description. There's a huge credit for this week's episode, Dona Cotrina. You heard her voice a hell of a lot today. Links for her work is in the show notes. As always, thank you for listening. You are the best. See you next Tuesday.